2, 3, 4.
Born and raised in Old Howard Beach, located on Jamaica Bay, when Jimmy Dowd was a grom, his mom took him daily down to the beach in Rockaway, where he developed his love of surfing. As soon as he was old enough to live on his own, he moved to Rockaway Beach and has been Rockaway surf royalty ever since. During the 90s, he worked in multiple skate shops in Manhattan. Eventually, Jimmy started his own brand, St. James Clothing, which was established in 2000 and became co-owner of Borders Surf Shop alongside the Stathis family. Jimmy Dowd is a true devotee to the neighborhood, and he is our guest on this week's episode of Swell Season Surf Radio. But before we get started, we got to mention that Swell Season is recorded and produced by the NewsStand Studio in Rockefeller Center in the heart of Manhattan. Check them out at Rockefeller Center on Instagram, and Swell Season is distributed by WAX.Radio. And we have our guest here, Jimmy Dowd. How you doing there? Hey, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, cuz? How we doing? I finally
We're
made
good.
it on the show, you know?
I know, finally,
Yeah.
you know? So, stoked to have you on, man. Stoked to have such local surf royalty on here.
I love when you throw that out, the royalty. Man.
Well, it's like
making me
I
blush.
well, I mean, you've been around for ages. You're known amongst the community. You've done a lot for the community. I think both you and I also kind of grew up surfing New York in the 90s and, knew all the same people and it's kind of, when I think Rockaway, I think of Jimmy Dowd, man,
Right
So,
on,
I mean,
right on.
especially old school Rockaway, I think of you, man. And,
Yeah.
also, we have you on the show because we're also promoting your upcoming Rock Stock surfing contest and event. So, which I'm pretty excited to get into.
But it's going to be
Jim,
wild. It flourished very well. It takes me a while to set the event up and, dealing obviously with the obstacles of the current day and age. It's, it was a little more paperwork, a little more frustrating, but, perseverance. I mean, dedicated to surf and skate and just trying to get it. I'm not trying to get put down, That's it. We got to keep this ruling,
It's awesome. So I want to establish, your history a bit, because, for some of our listeners who may not be aware of the legend of Jimmy Dowd and all that, and, so you grew up in Old Howard Beach, so give our listeners, what was that like? You growing up 80s, 90s,
basically born in 74, so went to Grammar Catholic School around the block. So that was rad and all, getting smacked by nuns and learning the hard way. And but it was a blessing because I did need the discipline, I think, any young boy, and then once I was of teenager years, it was more I was just so amped on surfing because my mother just, to wear me out, the energy levels were high, and so she took us to the beach every day. So, it was started off with body surfing, then the body boards, and then it was the Mike Stewart or the Ben Severson BZ model, you know what I mean?
Mach 7.7.
Yeah, the Mach 7 and all of that, So, and then it was okay, skateboarding and then surfing and dirt bikes and, so growing up in Howard Beach was a lot of fun, man, and then it also came with some, per se peer pressure, difficult times with the awkward teenage years and the, per se, maybe wise guy situation that came up out of that neighborhood, and just growing up with all the kids there. And so there was
What
plenty of interesting
shenanigans?
years, I must say. You know.
Well, let's paint a picture. Like, what was Rockaway like? Kind of late '70s, early '80s when you were going down to the beach, and then like into the '80s. Like, what was that like? Give our listeners like a picture of it.
I
Of
mean, it
Rockaway
was,
around then. Like, give us a feel of what it
my
was
honest
like.
opinion, it was a smaller version of Coney Island. It really
Yeah,
was. I mean, we had Rockaway Playland. There were a million bars and restaurants, and it was just like on fire. I remember going on the Atomic Smasher and bashing my front lip on it because I was too tiny to be on it. But my dad was like, you gotta go on. So I was so pissed at him because I got hurt on the darn thing. But I mean, you'd go play skee ball, you'd go do all these different things, and it was very enjoyable. And then out of nowhere, man, it just like boom, like everything just started closing. And your staple spots with like Connolly's or certain bars right on the water like the Wharf or Bungalow Bar really wasn't there. It was called Pier 92 and
yeah,
a couple other spots, but there really wasn't much. But there was always surfing. Like
yeah.
that was constantly going. Not in the magnitude obviously it is today, but it was always in the everyday lifestyle of even the older guys that are the real
What
legends.
like what were you had like Tommy Senna with his surf shop, but like were there any other surf shops around in Rockaway at that time?
Well, Tommy Center, is Tom Senna. So what are you gonna do with that? But there was Secret Spot Surf Shop, and that was ran by Fernando, and that was like really cool because it was like grassroots. Some of the local boys worked there, and it was like it was something to really revolve around. Um, and that was in the early '90s, and he lasted a while. And during that time, I had tried my first store down in Rockaway, which is in 1995, called Blood New York, with a cousin and another friend, skate shop. And we were like the skate shop, and they were like the grassroots surf shop. And then Tom was Tom. Um, you know,
Yeah.
so, you know, I, I'm sure you've had plenty of conversations over the years on this show of what he does or did or does for surfing. So, you know,
I love Tommy
I
personally.
mean,
He's
I
always
give
been
him I
really
give
nice
him
for
credit.
me,
He's a nice guy personally, but when it comes to business, I've had some local run-ins with him where he really
Oh, I
tries your
wouldn't want to
hardest
get in
not to
his
get.
way business
He
wise.
really he really is there is no room for any kind of mentoring, assistance, or he will shut you down. He will try his hardest to shut you down. So hey, that's business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I get it, but I don't think it had to be that harsh. But then again, back then, that's the way it was. Like, oh, if somebody has Quicksilver, the other store can't get it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now things are a lot different.
Now they'll open up everyone. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
What I mean, what do you think why did things kind of shut down, and what was that like seeing Rockaway kind of like all like going from like kind of Coney Island-esque kind of vibes to to everything kind of changing? Like what do you remember like kind of happening that shifted, do you think?
I just remember being a child and having all these options and things open and like you're a kid and it's just like everything's amazing. And then there was that period where I wasn't involved with any of that. It was
Yeah.
just, why are you going to Rockaway? I'm going to surf. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And it was more like, I'm in the city by that time and other boroughs and venturing into meeting new people and
Right.
new things and chasing what's really out there in the city.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I did. But then once I think that the first Quicksilver store to open up in 2000,
Yeah.
that's what really kind of like blew up New York City surfing, I think, because once it went kind of corporate and the masses and the tourists really started finding out like, oh wait, like I can move to New York and still surf and work that amazing top shelf money job. and then you got people moving from all over the world with that extra thing because they didn't have to give up their personal outlet,
I feel like that, and like it was like a confluence of things. It was that. I also feel like you had that movie Thicker Than Water with the Malloys and
yeah.
Jack Johnson, where they showed them kind of just being in New York, and all of a sudden people are like, oh yeah, and then a couple little articles and stuff came out, so I think that definitely helped change people's perception
the New York
of
Times
surfing.
too. The New York Times would
Yes.
be out here religiously dropping bombs, like. And listen, I love it, man. I mean, look at the neighborhood now.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. I mean, I don't
The
have to go
food
anywhere.
options are incredible.
I don't have to go anywhere. Finally, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, you coming to Manhattan? I'm like, no.
No way. You're coming out to Rockaway instead,
Exactly.
Who were some of the local surfers that you looked up to in that time when you were a Grom? Who were like some of the who were the ones that like you had to watch out for, and who were the ones that were like kind of took you under their wing?
Dennis Farrell was like played a big role in me growing up, and his sons,
Dylan.
that yeah, because he was like shaping boards in his garage, and he was just so humble and laid back, and would like get you into waves and like egg you on, and all of his kids rip,
Yeah.
Sundance is down in Puerto
I remember
Rico,
getting schooled by Dylan quite a bit.
Yeah,
in the
Dylan
ESA
throws
comps.
down. Yeah, so
Him and Pete Egan.
yeah, exactly. So Pete Egan rips too, and a lot of those guys, but like the older guys too. And there's one guy now that Buddy Samus. He's a name that a lot of people forget about, but he was a gnarly regulator, man. I mean, he was
Really?
also into some heavy stuff, which thank God he turned his life around. But he had the best saying once. I remember trying to jump off the rocks, and one leg fell in between the rocks, the other leg up. Set wave came, totally dragged me across the whole jetty. All my fingernails popped off. Looked like Freddy Krueger got a hold of my back. So I finally make it out, and I'm just like so mad and in pain. And there's Buddy on a Ricky Carroll with the nose duct taped on, all out of his mind. And I'm like, I hate it when it's this crowded. It drives me crazy. And he's like, whatever, Dowd. When I paddle out, all I see is me. I was like, woo. I was like, wow. Now that's a saying.
All I see is me.
Yeah. But, then again, the guy's 6'3", like 250 and completely like out of his bird, So,
What about like Pat Reen or any of the Reen family? Those guys also
Pat is also just like endurance, man. I mean, I just love that guy. He's so quiet and so humble, and he used to rip. And I mean, he's got to be in his 60s now, and he's still
no, he's
paddling
older,
out.
man. He's in his he's older even.
I don't know, man. The last time I talked to him,
he
I
was with
kind
my
of
dad.
shocked.
He hung with my dad. My dad's 79.
Is he? I don't know if
Yeah.
he's in his 70s. Is he? I don't know. Time's flying by. My son's already 7, so if we were talking the last time, he could have been 65, and now he could be in his 70s. Yeah. So you're probably right. So it's an honor when I get to be in the water and really rarely catch an uncrowded session. That's where you'll find Pat. Where most of us are trying to like navigate, sandbars and spots, and like, oh, nobody really knows about that yet on what, you know what I mean? And you try to find your little niche, get that little 2-hour window solo,
Yeah. No, but I know like Pat, and then like he's got his nephews and all that now that kind of rule the lineup a bit.
I've flowed a lot of the Reen boys, like Liam Reen, and James Reen, and a couple of those guys. James was playing in that band for a while, the Skells, which are really good.
Yeah.
And that whole family's just talented,
Serious.
And also like Jeff Anthony, Jeff Anthony I grew up with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was just always the best, he just rips, he's got that Slater compact, that like Slater like compacted, body and height, where he's just like, he's like glued to that thing.
He's glued to it, and also, I mean, just incredible style. Like he's someone who's like a great student of surfing. Like he really studies technique. He knows how to articulate it as well. Plus, it doesn't hurt to be really low center gravity and be a little close